My name is Crispin. I work for Schlumberger in our Technology Innovation Center in California, right? In Silicon Valley, what we call the Bay Area. Before I start, I thought probably I would give you a little bit of history about myself so you'll have an idea of who I am and why maybe I'm suited to give this talk, or maybe why you think I'm not suited to give this talk, right? So I actually, I went to University of the West Indies here, right? I did electrical and computer engineering, right, at St. Augustine. I then started to work for Schlumberger. So I worked for Schlumberger for a number of years, and I moved around between Venezuela, Trinidad, and we did some work in Barbados as well, right? I then left Schlumberger, and I went to work for a company called KSI out of Houston. And eventually, I came back to Schlumberger in Houston. I worked in Houston for a while as a drilling engineer, and moved up quite a bit before 2010. So in 2010, if you remember, we had an incident in the Gulf of BP, and drilling was, everybody stopped drilling, right? The US government stopped all offshore operations. And at that point, I was transferred to Beijing. So I went to Beijing to work on software. When they finally decided that they wanted to drill again, I was moved from Beijing back to Houston. 2011, I moved from Houston to Alaska, and I ran the drilling engineering center there, and a lot of the drilling optimization that we did there. In 2013, I moved to Siberia, and I worked there for 3 years, where I was drilling manager for Western Siberia. In 2016, I moved to Moscow, and I headed the Russia Land Drilling Engineering Center. And then in 2018, I was moved to California as a subject matter expert in our technology center. So maybe I don't have just enough experience just yet, but I'm trying to get there. So hopefully next time you see me, I'll have a lot more to add. So let's start a little bit about Schlumberger. So first of all, before we start, does anybody mind if I make this informal? Okay, very good. Very good, because I'm not a very formal guy. This thing only comes out for SPE and IADC, and apparently now the Trinidad Energy Conference. So anybody knows what Schlumberger is? This is a business school, and we are a business company, independent of all the other things. So does anybody know what Schlumberger does? Anybody? If nobody puts their hand up, I'm going to start to point at people. So the person with their eyes closed is going to get pointed at first. Anybody know what Schlumberger does? Nobody? All right. Very good answer, very good answer. It's a little bit wrong though, but it's still a very good answer. So actually, Schlumberger is it's not only a drilling company, it's a technology company in the oil field services sector, right? And we pride ourselves on being a technology company. I believe that the battery is dead in this thing. So maybe we'll have a little like sign, and you'll switch the slide. Right? So, or if you have two batteries at the side there, we could stick it in meanwhile. So let's go to the next slide. I think he was pressing it. No. All right. So where do we fit? In the oil and gas industry, we do upstream, downstream, and the midstream. What does that mean? Does anybody know what is the upstream, the difference between the upstream and the downstream? That guy. All right. So good answer, but this time it was the guy behind you that was answering. But very good answer, so that is correct. So we basically take you from nothing to having fossil fuels in your hand, right? Just a little bit of information. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. I'm guessing not a lot of people know that we are the #1 provider of technology integrated project management and information solutions. So see, I have to look back at the presentation because every 2 days, this presentation automatically changes. And if I don't look at it, I'll forget what it is, right? So where do we fit? So we can divide the company basically into 2 parts, right? The digital and the operations. For the sake of this conversation, I will divide it into these 2 parts. I'm part of the digital organization. So what does that mean? It means that we look at technology, we look at tool lifecycle management, manufacturing, engineering, digital, and marketing, right? There's a whole other side of this, which is operations. So along with these horizontal lines, we have vertical lines of exploration and field development, well construction, unconventional, and production. So I'm responsible for well construction, okay? Across the world, we have centers for research, engineering, manufacturing, and digital technology. We have locations in Japan, in Beijing, Moscow, Cambridge, UK, Cambridge, US, Houston, and of course, as I was saying, I'm in Silicon Valley, right? So now let's get a little more detail about what I do, where I do it, and how that relates to, as we were saying, the 4th Industrial Revolution. So I work for STIC, the Technology Innovation Center. So this is our office, right there. And that's where I park, right there. Actually, I've recently discovered that it's much better to park right here because you don't get the sap from the trees, you get a little bit of shade, nobody can hit you when they come around the corner, and so on, right? So why are we in Silicon Valley? Well, in 2014, we saw the change that was coming, right? In fact, in order to see it coming in order to do anything about it in 2014, we needed to have seen it many, many years before that to put together the infrastructure that was needed. We don't just go to a state and put a building down and put some people inside it and start to operate, right? So in 2014, we built the center in the heart of Silicon Valley. And we had a few goals for the center to take us, to lead the way, right? And I can tell you, before I actually started to work there, I came on a trip to Houston to visit with the guys, and we were talking. I was the business end of the technology side, right? So I brought the business ideas that they would then use. And we played with some cool technology. And I made a lot of videos because this is stuff that I've never seen before, and I think nobody has seen it before. So I took some of these videos back to my manager, and I said, look at how cool this is. And he said, I can't believe that you guys are wasting millions of dollars to do that when I have a business to run. So that gives you a perspective of, even inside the company, the tearing aside of, should we put a center there or should we not? And how do we make value out of that, right? So in the following slides, I'll show you exactly how we extract value from the center. Or at least I'll hope it will be. All right, so by the way, we gave this presentation in Stanford a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't change anything, so it's in a little bit different format, like for you guys. So this is just showing all the happy people working where we are, because we're trying to convince the people in Stanford that we are the best place to work for. What we want is people to go to Apple, to go to Google, to go to Facebook, to get offers, and then come and work for us. So what kind of people do we have there? We have experienced hires, right? These are people that they've worked in NASA, they've worked in the US government, the intelligence agency, they've worked in Google and Apple and all these companies, right? We have people that are transfers like me, that bring the knowledge of the company and the business, and that is along with graduates, people that have recently graduated and are coming into the company for their first jobs, and then we have people that are interns. And across the center that we have, we have 6 main parts that we focus on. So we focus on cloud and data technologies. We focus on machine learning. We focus on visualization and 3D, user experience, and did I miss any? And Internet of Things. This said Internet of Things up until 3 months ago when Google released their TPUs, and we knew that it was going to be commercial very soon, and so we updated it to Edge so that we could still be ahead of everybody else. Things changed very fast in our business. 2 months ago, virtual reality and augmented reality was not a section. This was just a fun thing that we played with in the office. And today, this is something that we do. This is now a department. We are hiring people that will focus specifically on that and see how we can bring that technology to add value. So in the following slides, I'll go through each one of those piece by piece to give you an idea of what each of those mean, right? Does anybody here know what is UX? Exactly. So in the past, we have designed software for engineers, right? And when you design software for engineers, it's a lot different from designing software for the everyday user. And so with that in mind, and the rate of change of our business, we had to have a user experience team. So the user experience team is by far the most funded, the highest funded, and the largest team that we have in our center, because we see that as being very important. High performance computing. So think about 10 years ago. So I'm not going to ask the question, but in seismic world, if you have to do processing, you can take 2 weeks to process a cube. And today we can do the same processing in a matter of minutes. And we're not talking about changing anything other than any of the equations or any of the way that we do it other than using high performance computing. What can take one mainframe a certain amount of time to do, we can now do with thousands of virtual machines in parallel. And companies like Google and Microsoft and so on are making these things possible. I'll get to that in a second. I'm not going to go through all the details on the slide. The idea is just to give you, I see some people reading, which is very good, and some people are looking at me expecting me to like read out the dates and what is happening. I'm not going to go through everything like that because the idea is for you to understand what is high performance computing, and then we'll tie it all in at the end to show why it's important for what we do. See, that was a test. I didn't press the button. I just wanted to see if there was somebody in there pressing the button when he sees me press it, just to make sure it works. All right. So visualization. This is something that we could never do as an industry, right, in the oil and gas. We would take such a huge computing power to do something like this, to look at a cube like this, that it was just almost never done. But because of the strength of our high-performance computing, visualization, big data, we're able to now do things like look at the entire Gulf of Mexico in one spot at one time. This is not even running on a machine. This is running on the cloud somewhere. So somebody just logs into their laptop and they look at it, right? By the way, this might seem sort of impressive, but this is really, really old technology. We're not going to talk about the things that we're working on right now. These are the things that are almost already commercial, already expressed to clients that I'm talking about today, right? So in case you're interested, this is actually, so this is a very recent one. It's quite recent. So what we did is we decided that we wanted to have a way to visualize what was going on before it actually happened. So before you, for example, before you drill a well, you put a number of people from all the companies together because every service company is doing a certain task. And we all sit down for a week. We get a nice hotel somewhere, usually in New Orleans. We go there, we sit down, and we plan the well. So we execute the well on paper. So we call it a drilling well on paper, right? So we talk about every single thing that we're going to do. So this guy's going to pick up the pipe. This guy's going to put the mud here. This guy's going to move these tools here. And when we do that, there will be times where someone will say, well, you can't move that there because I'll have my truck parked there. right? So that's not good. And then we'll change the schedule, and we'll email out a new schedule, and then we'll go through it again, right? So what we wanted to do is we wanted to find a way to digitize that. So everybody could stay in their homes. They put on, maybe it's a Google eyewear, or they on their laptops or whatever, and they see everything that's happening in 3D. And we wanted them to be able to scroll through the timeline, and we wanted them to be able to zoom into certain parts. So I could zoom into where one guy was walking to his truck, and I could zoom into where one guy was picking up some pipe, right? And in order to do this, we had to use gaming technology. So we are an oil field company. We don't have any gaming technology, right? We don't have any rendering technology from the slide before. So we need strategic partnerships to find this stuff, to find out how to get this stuff done. We don't have virtual machines, right? We don't do high-performance computing. For high-performance computing, we have to go to NVIDIA. For virtual machines, we have to go to Google, right? So I'm starting to paint the picture here for why we do what we do, right? Anyways, this is just really cool because it's almost like you're playing a video game and you can see what happens. And then all the users can input what they want to change on the fly, and they see it changing. So no longer we get a free trip to New Orleans. So we have a big data team. Data is one of the most precious things that we have. But in the oil and gas industry, it's almost like we have no data, because there's a difference between data and labeled data. Data is very powerful, but if it's not labeled, it's useless, right? So we're still trying to figure out, how do we get this data? How do we label it? Imagine a company like Schlumberger in over 85 countries, over 120,000 employees operating across the globe. We have data on servers. We have data on people's laptops. We have data in the cloud. We have data on the well site. We have data in the plants. We have data that we don't even know where the data is, right? And we need to figure out a way to get all that data and to store it somewhere, and then to classify it, to quantify it, and then, only then, we could find something useful to do with it, right? Just because that has some client information and it's US, I'll skip that slide. Question? So this is a very interesting question, and we are in a very unique situation. As a service company, we do work for the oil companies. The data is ours, and yet not ours. So there's a process where we classify different parts of the data as client data, and as public data, and as Schlumberger private data. So we have to be very careful about how we do that, but that is something that we do. So not all the data is ours, and some of the data is public, and some of the data is owned by the client. But more and more, just to get off track, I'll give you a story. In I think it was like 2014 when we started, there was a huge fight between us and the operators, because we would go to the operators and we say, we would like to host your data in the cloud. We would like to ask Google to take your data and to put it in the cloud, right? And operators were like, no. That is a huge security risk for us. We will not allow you to put our data there. And who can access this data? And how can you access our data? And what about someone stealing our data and the competition and all of these things, right? In 2017, I won't call the client's name, but we had an operator that came into our office. So another thing that we do in our office is we host clients to show them the technology that we're working on for the future. So a client came in and they said, okay, how can we get on your cloud? That is the change in 3 years of the mentality of the people seeing the way that the technology is changing, right? In machine learning, so we also have a machine learning team, and they're constantly not really building anything with machine learning, but they're testing different models and testing new technology and trying to figure out what are the best ways to solve things. If you wanted to hire 10 data scientists and put them in a room to work, that wouldn't solve any of our problems. What you have to do is you have to bring these people in at different levels, let them test different options, and it's almost like they're doing research for projects that they don't know exist. You don't just hire these people and say, okay, I'm going to give them problems to solve, right? The problems that they solve is which is the best way to do something. That's basically what they do. So now we move into the next stage, which is kind of the more fun part. So in the next few slides, I'll have some pictures of some of the projects that we work on in our office. A lot of the projects that we work on are software, but from time to time, we do have a lot of things that we have to prototype and we have to test. So on the screen here, what you're seeing is a small model of a platform, of a production unit. So we have 3 wells, and we have 3 pumps. And this model tests a number of things that we do. So let's see what this picture is saying, because I didn't take this picture. So first of all, we're testing augmented reality. So do we have technology? And I'm sure you've played games where you hold up your phone or your iPad and you superimpose an image onto an existing object like a chair or a table, right? So what we're doing is we're saying, can we pick out this pump? And then can we assign data from this pump, which is feeding to sensors through this pump? So augmented reality. Can we automatically control these pumps based on, so what you see here is like a little bit of a, this is the thing that we clean the electronics with, and it comes out really cold. So what we do is we spray that on one of the wells to simulate a temperature change, and we see if the other 2 wells can change their speed to compensate for it. So in the field, this is something that, this is like the model that we're using to test. The other thing we're doing is these are all remoting into a separate machine, so it's always wireless. So imagine like in real life, these things are going to be thousands of feet apart, and they're all going to be talking to each other. And so instead of having 3, you're going to have maybe 10,000, and 10,000 of these are going to be talking to each other to try to optimize the production at any given time. So that's something else that we work on. This is really fun because this is actually my second desk. So everything that you see here is in my office. This is a mini rig. So we built a small rig to test some of the things that we're working on. And some of the things we're testing is, for example, we're using Google Platform to test voice as an input into the rig. So you can imagine a future where instead of having cameras, everything is done via voice. So we have microphones everywhere, and it's listening to everything you do. You walk into your work site, and you talk and carry on your day as normal. At the end of the day, you say, give me a report. Based on the data and based on what it has been listening to you say, and the other people in your office, it can give you a full report on what is going on. It can use machine learning to tell you what is going on with your data and stop you. So for example, look out, the temperature at this point is getting too high. You need to take action. This is the action we recommend, right? And things like that. It's not as simple as it seems. There's a lot of complications in doing things like this. You have things like context and language and voice and noise and just to go on, right? So we need to solve some of these problems, and that's actually what we do with this. Here we have a number of sensors that we're just testing how can we control the rig with your voice. So, drill ahead, slow down, whatever. And to be honest, this is really not the newest technology that we have, but this is technology that we've developed, and I'm just showing it here as for show and tell, basically. This is another new project that we have. So we actually take a drone and we fly around the well site. And this is for production, actually. We fly around the well site, and the drone brings the information back. We download it, and it creates a 3D image of the entire well site. And that feeds into a software that you could then manipulate, so you use that as your planning software. So actually, we will take that software and plan how things will play out over the next 30 years. It's really planning it for 30 years. We'll drill in a short period of time, but then the well will go on to production, and it will last for about that time, right? And we need to plan how things move around in that time, where crews will come and set up, and so on. And so this is all done now automatically. We take the drone out and we fly it. And it's very interesting when you have to play with technology like this, because you get to test everybody's drone. You get to fly everybody's drone. You get to use the technology yourself. So we flew around the car park, and we tried to see if we could move people's cars along, and it's quite interesting. And then most of the time, building a culture in Silicon Valley, we just play around. So we have a huge game room, we have a sleep room, we have a lot of relaxation areas that people just come in and play. We have video games, we have a room with just Nintendo Wii, and I think there's a Switch and so on. And that builds that culture, right? I'll open now up for questions because I wasn't checking any time and I'm not sure if I went over or under. So I think we'll open for some questions. Any question? Anybody's asleep?
I have a question.
Shoot.
For the voice activated command, very few with authentication to prevent unauthorized users from distributing command.
So that's something that we don't have to deal with because that's an API that a lot of companies have. So Amazon, Google, a lot of these guys have APIs that do that already. So we have strategic partnerships with them that we go to them and we say, we'd like to use this for this case, right? That is a very simple problem to solve, by the way. Everybody has a very unique signature. The harder problem to solve is when two people speak at the same time. How do you break that up and extract that signature? That is a more complicated problem to solve. And to go even further, another even more complicated problem is how do you extract the context of what these people are saying? So if you've ever been at a real work site, people don't speak like us. They use a lot of nice language, and they say a lot of nice things when they come in the office, and they see like the guy that was there before didn't do his job, right? They have a lot of nice things to say, and the computer needs to understand that that is not going on the report. We also need to understand when we say certain things. For example, in drilling, we say, what is the ROP? This is rate of penetration, which really just means how fast are you drilling. So it needs to understand that ROP means how fast are you drilling. So a lot of context needs to be sorted out, and that is something that is very, very, very complicated. And even some of the bigger companies weren't able to support us in that. And we actually have to go to like other smaller companies, startup companies that have ideas, unique ideas to help us with those sort of things. That's a very good question. Yes, either one.
How do you go about deciding, like say you have 10 ideas, how do you all pick which ones to carry through to production? How do you assess the value of those ideas once you have?
So we have in our center, there are 4 of us. So as I said, I was looking after drilling well construction. There's a guy for production, there's a guy for seismic, right? And between the 4 of us, we have almost full control over what we decide, what we do. We also look at what the business needs. And so there are people that in the business that are identified that drive those decisions. So they will kind of veto yes or no. And then because we are in an innovation center, we have the authority to just ignore them as well. So one of the things that we strive on is actually one of my objectives this year is to find projects that make people uncomfortable. So our center actually is asking me, these guys in the business, they would like this product. I would like you to find something else that they don't want. And then you need to convince them of the value of that product. So to give you an example, so we have this idea that, and it's not just us, a lot of people doing it right now. So we have these cameras, these video cameras at the worksite, and we're tracking everybody and everything. So we can tell if somebody doesn't wear a hard hat. We can tell if somebody leaves the tool in the wrong spot. We can tell if you bend down and you pick up something and you don't have the right posture, right? So inside there is operations and HSC, safety, and a lot of other things that we're tracking. And we said, this is amazing. We could put this on all our rigs and it will cost us nothing. And we went to the guys and we said, would you like to put this on your X, Y, and Z project that is operating right now? And the guy said, are you crazy? We don't have the bandwidth on our facilities to facilitate you transferring video like that from 20, 30 cameras at once. So we got shut down. So we went back into the corner, and then a year later, the guys came back and said, okay, but what if we do it on the edge? And we got shut down, and we came back again, and we said, well, there's a new technology, we can use this. And eventually the guy said, I don't think this is going to work. And we keep pushing and pushing and pushing until one day, someone said, let's try it. We try it, a guy walks out without a hard hat, and we catch it. And the potential to save our life is so big that immediately that is taken in. And we have projects, so we had intern projects last year where guys they tested the Amazon system. There's a few systems that are already out there from large and small companies, and we tested each system to see which one would fit best into this idea. And then we ran some tests to see if we could actually do it. And so the same idea that's making people uncomfortable, once it's proven up, they will accept it, right? So these ideas are coming from us, It's coming from the business. It's also coming from the clients. So clients come to visit us and they tell us what are their problems, and we take note and we see if we can solve some of those things. And they're also coming from other industries. So there's a lot of other industries. So one of the things that we do is almost every week we have companies come in and present their ideas to us. And what we try to do is figure out if these ideas could be transferred to the oil and gas industry, if these ideas are going to work for us. So there's a number of things going on at the same time, and it's pulling in all directions. But at the end of the day, the subject matter experts, the guys that have seen, almost every corner of the earth, all of the operations, how the business run, and have an understanding of what it would take to move forward, are the guys that can pull the strings. You had a question in the back? First there, and then we'll come forward. I understand. I understand the question. This is not a unique question, right? This is a question that we get all the time, everywhere that we go. We do not move into technology to replace humans. We move into technology because if we don't, we won't have enough people to do the jobs that are coming up that they don't know exist. To give you an example, we have a guy, and this is a classic example at one of the companies. I heard this in one of the presentations, so one of my colleagues made. We have a guy that we pay to climb up a light pole, and during the winter, and he needs to move all the snow off the cables, else it builds up and the cables gets too heavy and they break, right? So that was that guy's job. Up comes Mr. Technology and says, we are going to use a drone. We're going to fly a drone over the thing and it's going to just brush the snow off. This guy doesn't have any job. Well, maybe he doesn't have that job, but somebody needs to fix these drones and make sure they're working. Somebody needs to fly these drones. Somebody needs to go off to the site to make sure this is a place that the drone will work. And what you find is that I cannot answer that question because I do not even know what the jobs of the future will look like right now. But I know that the more that we bring that technology in, the more it changes. So for example, at one of our sites, we have 10 people moving the pipe, right? And that's a manual task. I don't know if anybody ever saw that on YouTube or something, like where the guys go there and they pull the pipe and they move it around, right? We now have iron roughnecks that just come in, grabs the pipe, tightens it, puts it away, and those guys don't have a job anymore. But because the iron roughneck is moving so fast, now we need to get that pipe inspected and up there faster than ever. We need to get more mud, which needs more mud engineers doing those jobs. And the type of jobs actually change. And in some cases, yes, we have reductions, and in some cases, we actually need more people. When I was in Russia, we actually didn't have enough people. We grew almost double from when I started to when I left, just because, and this is high volume, so they're not using technology, but the jobs are changing, and so the ideas that we had, people didn't embrace it. We had an idea that we could drill any well, anywhere in the world, from anywhere else, without people at the site. And in 2007, we actually did it. So we have a lot of publications on that, but when we started, nobody would support us, even internally, because there was a fear, where would these people work if we cut down? But then we need people in the operation support centers to look at how things work. We need more engineers to support those operations. So I don't have a full answer for you, but I don't think that it's reducing heads or increasing heads. It's creating new jobs that we didn't know existed before. You had one.
Yeah, question. You guys have
Last one?
open innovation process?
No. We have, so one of the slides I was showing that we have where I work, that's an innovation center, but you also have product centers, we have development centers, right? And we have research centers. We have places that do that, that's very structured and built on developing and delivering a product. We don't deliver products where I work, so we don't have a process. Our process is come to the office, think, come up with an idea, take it to the team that can test it and fail. One of the things that we want to do is we want to fail. So we're actually teaching that we need to fail more. So out of 100 projects, if one project makes it to the next level, that's a huge leap. And out of those 100 projects, if one of those make it to the next level, that's another huge leap. And we're hoping that out of the 10,000 projects that we start, and we get one success, right? You may not know it, but out of the thousands of companies in the Silicon Valley, there's only one Google and one Apple and so on. So the idea for us is we want to go through those ideas fast. We want to see how fast we could kill those ideas. So there's no structure whatsoever. Sometimes I have an idea and it's killed before I even eat lunch. Somebody comes in my office and I explain to them and say that's just stupid. We're not going to do that. And sometimes I have an idea and we discuss it and we say, okay, we're going to test that next week. And then we scramble to find the companies that can test it. We scramble to find the technologies that we need. We scramble to find, so every project needs to have a stakeholder inside our company. So we scramble to find a stakeholder that will support us. We get everything together and then we test it. And maybe it doesn't work. So there's a lot of projects that we go through that don't work.
Two quick follow-up questions. One, how do you fund your prototyping?
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, what's the cheapest prototype you guys have ever produced?
All right, so the first question is quite easy, right? As a company, Schlumberger believes in technology and research and development, right? We spend more than our 3 next competitors, probably combined in research and development. We want to be seen as industry leaders because that is what drives our competitive advantage. So it's not a matter of doing that, it's just there's contribution by every section. So what we call product lines today. So every product line has a requirement to provide a certain amount of budget. So you make $10, you must give $1 to research and development, which is funding us. There's no ifs and buts about it. There's no manager or anybody that can say that I'm not going to give that money or I need to make my profit. It doesn't work like that. So that answers that question. And the other one, to tell you what is the cheapest project, I don't know. The cheapest prototype? Well, I could show you. My cheapest prototype is actually right here. That is my cheapest prototype. So I went to Amazon and I went to robotshop.com, which is a store on Amazon, right? And I bought all these pieces. I bought the servos. I bought this thing for my son a long time ago and for him to learn robotics. And so I killed him and took out his heart and made it into the servo that's spinning this thing. I bought all the little pieces of screws and all those things myself. The breadboard I bought before I even took this job that I used to do prototyping in my previous job. And this is actually the company's, but I was using mine for quite a while before. And I built that in my office at my house. And when it was ready, I came to the office and I said, look, I think we need a mini rig to prototype. And I think that this is what I'm going to build. And when he said yes, the next day I brought it in and said, here, completed. And it cost them nothing because I didn't charge them back for it. So that is probably the cheapest thing that we've done. But when you have a team that loves what they do and wants to invest their time and their effort, they have people that work like 2 o'clock in the morning, nobody forcing them to be there, and they're in the office playing with stuff, basically playing with stuff. When we were testing those drones, guys were in the office flying drones in the night. Like, you think like it's a, you know what I mean? When we're doing the gaming stuff, yeah, we need to test this technology. Let's test the games that these guys built to see which one is the smoothest, which one has the best rendering, which one. So it's not a matter of being cheap or not. It's just about if you have the drive to do it, right? But it does take some commitment.
Right. So Fahim Mohammed is our very own faculty as well at Athaluk Jack. He's currently the managing director of pancaribbean.org and leads the competitiveness and technology portfolios in that organization. He serves as the project lead and principal consultant in areas of strategic planning, management, and leadership training, Islamic finance, and technology development. His corporate history has been complemented by entrepreneurial ventures such as in a range of industries, including restaurants, import import and sales and distribution. He is also the program director of our Masters of Information Systems and Technology Management and lectures in the area of MIS, business strategy, ICT and e-commerce marketing, and maritime ICT solutions. So we have a panel, which of course will include myself. I have some questions for you as well, but again, if you all have questions, certainly you can raise it to the panel as well. And there are mics on both sides that you could use for those who we can't hear properly.
You said that Schlumberger is also involved in midstream and upstream projects. So at your office, could you just give us a few of the projects that you will get on within your
I,
midstream, which I think is transportation, distribution, or you could clarify that.
yeah, so I,
Upstream, which would be like plants.
right, so I could give you an example. One of the nice projects that we just did was how do we use machine learning to optimize the production in all of the facilities. So for example, at different times, different wells will produce at different rates. And then you take that and you go to process it, right? So how do you know which ones that you need to take? And you can tie that into a lot of different things. Like you could tie that back into your financials. You could tie that back into the market. You could, I remember one time we drilled a well and we plug and abandon because we were waiting for the oil price to change, waiting for the political situation to change, waiting for, you know what I mean? So what we do is we use machine learning to look at all of those things and to make some recommendations on how we will, or where we will, or when we will process. So that is one of the projects that we do in terms of that.
I have a question. I mean, you're in Silicon Valley. I've been there as well. It's a pretty young crowd in terms of staff. I mean, what does Schlumberger have to offer to actually retain the quality staff that they need? So one thing is to get them. So let's assume you get them.
Mm-hmm.
What strategies you all incorporate to kind of like retain the staff?
So we have one thing that I see is keep the people happy, right? As long as you have happy workers, people will work. We also pay competitive. We have to compete. So while we see companies, the big companies as allies, we also see the big companies as competition. In recent times, we've lost people to some of the bigger companies as well. But on the other side, we have had, 16 or 17 interns last summer, and all of them have been offered return, and all of them have accepted. And so we strive to be the company that people want to work for. And we provide a different working environment. We have absolutely a different working environment in the digital to the field operations. It's not that we don't want those people to be happy, but they have different drivers, right? And when you talk about digital world and Silicon Valley, we have a different set of drivers. So people aren't just driven by money. They're also driven by their careers. And it's not the same as a Schlumberger career where you work for 20 or 30 years. It's a career where you build in one company and then you move to the other one and you build there and then you build somewhere else. They're driven by their lifestyle. One of the things that we have that we don't have anywhere else in Schlumberger is free food. So, and we have to do that because we have to compete with the other companies there that give the free food, right? So these are the kind of things that we have to do to keep up with the Joneses, as they say, right? In terms of development of the people, we have a number of strategies. We have fixed programs where digital people, data scientists, for example, have a fixed strategy to get them to a certain part of their career in a certain number of years. And basically a check-the-box exercise where they need to get certain competencies, which verified, and then they can move on.
As a follow-on to that, I hope you don't mind if I ask. Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to find out, is there a distinct profile or strength from the Caribbean workforce in your environment? Is that something that we could discern? Or?
Ooh, that is a very hard question that I do not know the answer to.
I mean, but that's your story, right?
So,
they found something in you that they wanted.
So, my story is one day while I was in UE, I went into the lab. So I used to play a lot of video games in UAE, right? So I went into the lab, and we were trying to network. So this, we're talking about like 1999, right? So we're trying to network the machines to play Quake, if anybody remember what that was. I don't know like the age of the people in here. So we wanted to play Quake, and I get in there and turn on the machine and no network, not working. So 2 hours later, in comes the lab technician. And I have the laptop, the machine in parts. And he was real mad. See, but why you didn't just call somebody? I think that is kind of unique to me, that is something that they were looking for in that role, right? So that transferred to when I was offshore, for example, and they sent a tool that wasn't working. Instead of sending it back and picking up the backup, start to open it up and figure out what went on with it. That is something that we have. But if you now, that is specific to probably a certain number of people, right? I think that your question was more along, is there something that we can train in Trinidad to prepare the workforce for these kind of jobs? I think that there is, but we don't, for the digital world that is coming, I don't see that it is just there yet. You know, the engineering and the computer science and the business and everything might be there, but we're not getting the future vision yet. And part of it is that we don't know what's coming, right? We have to make a set of guesses, and then we have to iterate as time goes along. And we cannot just have a university degree that is fixed for the last 15 or 20 years that hasn't changed, when the rest of the world has already changed, and whether they are in the right direction or not, right? Left to be seen, but they're moving ahead, and we need to be able to do the same things. We need to be able to look ahead of first we need to figure out what's coming, and then we need to make a plan and try to hit that.
I think it's a difficult proposition, because I can't imagine the school or any institution for that matter willfully encouraging students to go into the computer lab and just strip down everything. Yeah? So there has to be some kind of sandbox, some kind of channel for that creativity. And I could see that being a challenge as we move into that further.
I still think that Trinidad has some of the brightest minds in the world. I was very lucky to work in a company where I get to stand at the side of a lot of different types of people with a lot of different experiences and different types of education systems. And I still think that Trinidad has one of the best, and we have potential to do a lot more than we're doing. But it's not just about the potential, it's about vision, and it's also sometimes about finance, right? You see that these companies in Silicon Valley support the universities there in a way that we don't see here in our country. Like, we don't have that commitment as much. You see, we have a William Gates building in Stanford, which is totally funded by him. We don't have that here, those kind of things. And so we need that kind of commitment, be it from local companies, foreign companies, the private sector, the government. We need that kind of thing to grow our people to that level. But it's not just about coming to a class, teaching at a university, getting an accreditation, and then those people getting a degree and moving on. It's about creating a different way to think. And this is what I noticed that is happening, that a different way to think is happening. And I see it even with my children. Like, I even see the way that they teach things today is completely different. And we couldn't even believe some of the things that they do and how they do it. And we also lucky enough to change school systems, to test different school systems. So we've done like the Singapore maths test system. We've done the Russian math system. We've done, like, we ingrained in the US system for a while, and we could compare the different systems and find good things and bad as well. All right, so two very good questions, primarily because I have very good answers for them. So the first one, huh? So the first one is there's no lack of diversity in Schlumberger. Schlumberger is one of the most diverse companies on the planet. I have sat in courses. I was pulled over while driving in Houston in 2003, and the police, he took us out of the car, and he said, all right, let me see all your IDs. Azerbaijan, Russia, Trinidad and Tobago, Mexico, and he's like, Chinese girl was like, China. What? I can't even understand what it's saying there. He says, all right, very good. Guys, that wasn't a legal term, sorry, just go. We are so diverse. And even in our center there, that's diverse. I don't know if Richard, if you can hand me the clicker,
Sure.
and we could just go back to the slide 3, I think was where we showed the entire team.
Right, I think I remember that shot. Is it back or forward? You know the
Just
presentation.
just go. Right here, I think. One more.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. So, American, Indian, UK, Bangladesh, either Korea or something like that, Indian, Norway, Russia, Mexico, American, UK, but I think Ireland, or both of these guys are from the same place. I think it's Ireland or Scotland, based on the accents. There's another Russian guy. This guy's from either Pakistan or something like that. This guy's from Brazil. This guy is not Georgia, one of those countries close to Georgia. I can't picture it now, but it's one of those East, European countries. There's an old picture, so the rest of the guys I don't know them because they're gone already. So they're not working there anymore. And we have a Trinidadian that's working there. It's quite diverse. I mean, and this is probably the least diverse thing that we have, right? So I don't think I need to even apply to answer that question. I mean, we have objectives to be diverse in many different ways. Whether it's having male and female employees, or the locations or where the people are from. So Schlumberger is already a very diverse country, and there's no lack of diversity there, right?
So one was location. Does location matter?
So, no, that was the second question.
That was the third one. The
All right,
second
so
one
what was the second question?
Oh,
Okay, so I don't think that is a need for Schlumberger, to be honest. As a business operating in a country like this, you have a certain social responsibility to the people here, which I think they already fulfill in a lot of different ways, a lot of different things they do. But the quality of people that we get here is quite high. And the University of the West Indies is already what we call a key university or lead university. We already get a quality product out of here. So I will turn that around a little bit on you, and I'll say that it's not our responsibility to increase the level of people here. I would say that it is the responsibility of the people here to request that some companies like Schlumberger and the foreign companies support them. That is the way that I would put it. Because I don't think that Schlumberger is going to come to you and say, given that our business is going good and things are working for us, it's not our responsibility to come to you and say, I think you need to do something a little bit different. It's your responsibility to tell us what you need to do, right? And whether or not that happens or not, I mean, it's not just Schlumberger. We have a lot of companies operating here. And a lot of companies have the potential to help support the system, right? But it's also companies, remember that these companies operate a business. So it has to be a give and take. No company is going to fund something without anything. You're going to have to make a compromise in whether it be in some academia that will be lended to them or projects that you will do for them in response to, there has to be a give and take as well, right? So it's not something that's it's not just clear cut. And the third question was the location.
Does location matter?
How did location matter? So it, given that I am from here, I will refrain from answering about whether people want to work here or not. It's not only the climate that people consider when they want to work in a country. In terms of the location, location is very important, but I want to confirm that, that we understand that when we talk about Silicon Valley and we talk about being there and this whole conversation, this is in relation to this fourth industrial revolution. This is in relation to the digital technology that is taking, the evolution that is taking place. And that is why we want to position part of Schlumberger there. And we don't position all of Schlumberger there. We position a very small node. We have a very, very small unit there. So it's a very small node that that acts as sort of the connection to everything else. So location is important, but you could, I could see it happening where we could have 5 people there. They would have to work extra to make the connections with the universities. So let me put it like this. We make connection with the universities. We work very closely with the universities. We take interns. We have projects. We have a lot of training that goes on there and back and forths. They come to tour our facilities. They understand the challenges that we have. We also work with the local companies. So you work with big companies, for example. So any big company that you could call in Silicon Valley, we're working with them, we're partnering with them on projects. We have strategic relationships with them. We also work with the local startups, so we go and hunt technology that might be useful for us in the future, and we see how we could support that. So that cannot be done from somewhere else. That being said, I don't see why we couldn't, with enough commitment, do something like that in Trinidad. I have a lot of ideas about how we could have our own little Silicon Valley here, but it will not happen without commitment of all the players that we spoke about before.
Yeah. I think we have some, just to add some context to that, the part of the beauty of this whole 4IR trust, or this evolution into the fourth industrial revolution, is that it is not a specific technology, I think. It's a basket of technologies, whether it's virtual and augmented reality, whether it's Internet of Things or 3D printing or whatever. So there's a lot of scope and a lot of room for individuals with that interest to play in that space. Mm-hmm. And the way the industry, the technology industry globally is set up, anybody from anywhere with a good idea can get the kind of traction either in Silicon Valley or in MIT or in wherever, and we saw precedents of that across the board. For social media, for example, if you can devise a value proposition that generates 50 million users, daily active users, monthly active users, you're in a good position for a buyout and therefore get that. So I think part of the challenge is to channel the creativity that we have, not towards excuses to get out of work after Soca Fed or whatever it is, but really to direct it towards, well, look, here's a problem, there's the technology or the platform, see what you could do, play with the ideas and so on, and that. It gives us an opportunity, but it's also a challenge to get mindsets in that direction, yeah?
Yeah, you have a question, sir? And that's a bigger question. Now that Guyana has this big, windfall that is expected, how do we make sure that there's some kind of transfer to the community in Guyana from this windfall?
So, starting off with the first part, we have not done, so we've not done deep water remote operations yet in terms of manless operations. So we've done reduced crews, where instead of sending 4 people, we send 1 person, and he hits the button. He hits the big green button, right? We've done 4 wells so far, as I know, with manless operations in in recent times, right? I don't know how this is going to translate into deep water, and I'll give you the idea. I'll tell you why. The cost of a rig, a standard rig anywhere in U.S. land, is about $10,000 to $50,000 US per day. The cost of a deep water operation is anywhere from $500,000 US to $1 million US per day. So when you talk about the differences that people are willing to spend in technology to secure their information and their job and the quality assurance, basically, right? The service quality, it's 2 different things. I can afford to make a mistake here when I cannot afford to make a mistake there. That does not mean that it's the right or wrong technology. It means that there's an element of trust that we have not built yet. And that element of trust is the same thing that we see every day. When the first time you had a phone and you needed to put in your credit card, right? I'm not putting my credit card in that phone. What if I lose my credit card information? Or you need to put, we always come to these barriers where there's always a trust for technology. And I see that inside of all these companies at the same time. There are clients who will not let us do that. The first job that we actually, and the reason I know all of this is because I used to work very closely with the Operations Support Center in Russia, which we supported most of what was being done outside of Russia. So 90% of the jobs that we had inside there was outside of Russia. And there, the first job that we did that was manless operations, I wouldn't give too much details, but we weren't allowed to send people to that country. And the client was from that country and they needed our technology. And they were looking for a way to do the job without sending the people to the country. And we'd never done it before because we had the idea, we had the process, we had built, for the last 10 years, we had built that process up. And at that point, we said, well, we know how to do it, but you just have to have trust in us. And because it was do or die, we needed to do this, and this time we have no choice. It was a safety concern, so they said, okay, try it. We did it, successful. We did the second well, successful. We got into other countries that we shouldn't have sent people, so we were able to do it. And trust is how you build trust, right? And trust is a big part of it. And the other part of the question was?
Well, I interpreted the question in terms of the changes in technology and unemployment, and specifically he gave the example of Guyana. So the other question I had, which is kind of a spin-off, is that Guyanese is having this massive exploration taking place. In what ways can they leverage the technology that's coming into their country to actually probably tap into the 4th Industrial Revolution?
But you all have a lot of hard questions today, boy. You have any questions I know the answer to? So I don't know the answer to that question. I can give you an opinion. So you see, an opinion is really different from the answer. The answer is where I think I know. An opinion is when I know I don't know. So my opinion on this is that Guyana needs to be very careful about how they operate in the coming years. They hit goal, no doubt about it. They have something that everybody wants, and they need to be very careful. If you won the lottery tomorrow, how many people would you tell? Aha. So a lot of countries went through this situation, right? Trinidad included in Nigeria. Exactly, before the days of Amoko, right? One of the very good ones that I can bring up is our very dear neighbors that have in political issues right now. They went through the same thing. They used to be one of the richest countries in South America. And I remember working there in one year where the government made the decision that they didn't want any expats in the country anymore. And they seized all the assets of the foreign companies, and they were kicking out all the expats. And I was in the country at the time, so I was on that list to be kicked out of the country. They didn't do it then, so I didn't get kicked out, but they did it later on, right? And piece by piece, all of the foreign companies left. In fact, it's acknowledged now that Schlumberger left there for something like, if I remember correctly, $2.2 billion they walked away from in debt that they were not going to be paid, and they walked away from the country and they didn't do business there again. Without the technology and the infrastructure of the technology companies, you cannot build your technology in-house by yourself. Support. Silicon Valley cannot survive in Silicon Valley alone. They need construction. They need the parts from outside of the US that they bring in. Everybody needs to be connected. Everybody needs allies, right? When we talk about Silicon Valley, it's not just Silicon Valley. And that is a lesson for a lot of countries. Russia, for example, they understand. So there's one oil and gas company in Russia that doesn't use service companies that from external sources, and they operate on a very different way compared to the companies that will call in the Baker Hughes and the Sperry and the Halliburton and the Schlumbergers and and the Weatherfords and so on. We need people to come in and help and work together so that we could get those ideas, we could get that technology moving around. I don't think that Schlumberger could survive if it was just in in Africa or Australia or Brazil alone, right? And it's the same thing that goes back to the conversation with Guyana. Guyana needs to understand that they need these external countries to come in and show them how to do what it is. But they also need to understand that while they get something, they need to train their people. They need to put programs in place. Universities need to be built that will support this infrastructure. Else, what will happen? Everything will be run as it is today out of Trinidad and Tobago. We drilled, I was very lucky. I was working in the Gulf of Mexico in 2011 when a company called Tullow drilled a few wells in Suriname. French Guiana, sorry, right? I was actually one of the drilling engineers planning that project. And I was very lucky to see how, they went into a country that had almost nothing and they found the reserves. And from there, it was just forward thinking. Guyana needs to see that if they want to move into the future, if they don't want to get swept aside, they need to right now be very smart, first of all, make the decisions that will put something in their pocket, not just the pocket of the operators or the service companies or the foreigners, right? And they need to make sure that they also remain allies with these people because these people will help them along the way. They cannot do it by themselves. If those companies walk away tomorrow, Guyana cannot produce that oil by themselves. The best case scenario without the technology and the training is something like Petrotrin that happened here. I see so much potential in our local companies, so much things that we could do, and we don't do it today. And hopefully that will not happen to Guyana in the future.
So I just want to take about 2 more questions and then ask you all just to close in terms of final thoughts and raise a hope for the Caribbean and for IR.
All these questions.
While they trade on the question, I'll just jump in on that whole Caribbean context thing. I think Guyana's population is a lot smaller than ours. It's 750,000. What they will want to ensure that they provision against is the reality that we witnessed in so many other jurisdictions witnessed, a huge manual labor force and alongside a scarcity of skilled workers. And I think that would be something critical in their negotiations and the build out of the industry. If they were to position as a product center or a development center or whatever, so that the technology transfer is channeled towards some future position. Yeah.
Quite true. Any more questions?
So I want to ask Stephanie to just give a vote of thanks, and I could release you all to have a safe passage home.
So while she's doing that, I will say in my closing thoughts, from where I sit today, what I see is that a country like Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean, by extension, we need commitment in order to make these changes. If we don't have this commitment, we'll just have a nice conversation and a nice set of talking, and we'll go around in circles. And I'll probably come back to Trinidad for another visit at some point, and I'll come back here and say the same thing. We need commitment. We need to figure out what we need in the future, and we need a plan, and then we need to do it.
Right? My take on it is that I think, like you, as I said, you need to have a plan. But sometimes you don't need to make big steps. I mean, I recently returned to Trinidad and Tobago last year, and one of the big things is that the large buildings that I saw, and so most of them were government buildings, and there's this perception that you need to invest a couple $1 million in order to make an impact. But the people who are manning the buildings are the same people. that were manning the buildings before. So the culture actually didn't change. So sometimes you don't need to make big steps. You need to make small steps that are important, and then also keep making those steps. And be clear in terms of the things that you have to you could leverage upon. So creativity in the Caribbean. I honestly think our people in the Caribbean are extremely hardworking as well. So we need to do more of the good things and less of the bad.
Yeah, just to build that out, I would say at the organization level, there is the critical need for us to realize that yes, we could automate operations and achieve a higher level of efficiency and cost effectiveness and so on, which is great for your current business model, but there's the need to consider in the context of 4IR that because the cycles of changes are so much faster and so much more impactful, we need to change the business model itself, move towards something that is much more agile and stable. So for example, you guys made a provision to invest in R&D. Any organization making that leap has to channel some focus towards an R&D support. Yes, some people in operations might lose their job, but you're trading it off or balancing it off with new jobs in some of the more creative side. So I think is a holistic commitment, and just to reiterate your point.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Stephanie Lizama Rogers. I'm actually the lead researcher from the Center for Strategy and Competitiveness, which is a research institute at the Arthur Lockjack Global School of Business. And we actually privileged this afternoon to give the vote of thanks and closing remarks on this significant event, innovation and the fourth industrial revolution. Now, I'm so happy to see the interest and the direction in terms of where technology is actually taking us, particularly the exciting work by Schlumberger, as well as feedback from the panel. So on behalf of the business school, the audience, and myself, we extend a very hearty vote of thanks to our future speaker, Mr. Crispin Chatar, and of course the panel, Mr. Fahim Mohammed and Dr. Richard Ramsawak, who's also the director for the Center for Strategy and Competitiveness, for actually gracing us on the implications of the fourth industrial revolution. Now, this event for me was a bit eye-opening. Mr. Chatar and the panel was able to open our appetite by showing us how technological revolution could fundamentally alter the way we work, as well as how it relates to our business. So finally, I just also want to give a little thanks to the, even though they are not here, but we do have facilities, the marketing team and learning assurance unit for actually working with us in this event and for their enormous support. So again, thanks everyone for coming out. And we do hope to have more events as it relates to the fourth industrial revolution, and that you could also be part of it as well. So thank you again.